If you were ever to visit the Brendan branch line, you would probably see Edward the Blue Engine working hard. Every day he passes by the vicarage orchard, where he sees Trevor the traction engine.
Good morning, Trevor. Sorry, Edward, can't talk. The vicar needs help with his garden party tomorrow.
Every year, the vicar of Wellsworth holds a garden party, and it is Trevor's job to give rides. Edward's job is to pull passengers to and from the party. One day, he arrived at Wellsworth Station. There was a poster for the garden party on the wall. Edward smiled. He remembered that day a long time ago when he helped out with the garden party. That night, he was talking to the other engines in the shed.
And then, there were posters pasted all over my boiler, cab, and coaches. I'm really looking forward to this year, especially considering the fact that it has been...
I believe story time is over, Edward. We all need to get some sleep.
Never mind, Edward. I know you're excited. But Edward had already fallen asleep. Soon, the party day arrived. Edward was pulling coaches filled with passengers. The vicar had to invoke the help of Bertie the bus, as there were too many passengers for Edward to take. Soon, Edward was waiting to take his last train of the day. The people got into the coaches, the guard blew his whistle, and Edward puffed away. Meanwhile, Terence the tractor was pulling a trailer of fruit to the party. Just then, his driver saw a fallen tree on the road and applied Terence's brakes. The force of Terence's stop caused the trailer's hatch to unlock, and the fruit tumbled onto the tracks.
Oh no!
Just then, Terence heard Edward's whistle in the distance. Edward saw the fruit and applied his brakes, but it was too late. Squashed fruit flew everywhere.
I'm sorry, Edward. There was a fallen tree on the road and I couldn't stop in time.
That's okay, Terence. I can manage. And with that, Edward puffed away. It took a long time, but Edward finally arrived at the station. The passengers got off and went on to Bertie, who was going to take them to the garden party.
Well, Edward, did you crash into a jam factory on your way?
Edward was too tired to reply. That evening, as he was having the squashed fruit cleaned from his wheels, the Fat Controller came to see him.
Well done, Edward. I've spoken to the Vicar of Wellsworth, and he agrees with me that you are a really useful engine. Although next time, please watch where you're going.
Gordon is one of the strongest engines on the Fat Controller's fleet. His main job is to pull the Express, and he is proud of it.
Express coming through!
Typical Gordon, always being boastful. He arguably has one of the most important jobs on the island, which makes him very boastful. But he is good-hearted though, and will help any engine in trouble. One day, a storm blew across the island. This made the engines very cross, as there were many delays. Gordon and James were waiting at the big station. Thomas was shunting trucks in the yard.
Have you ever seen a storm like this?
No. In fact, I haven't seen this much rain before, and that's saying a lot.
Just then, Thomas arrived with Gordon's coaches.
Here you go, Gordon.
Thank you, Thomas. Goodbye.
Goodbye, Gordon.
Goodbye, James. Look out for any trees that wander onto the line.
Be quiet, Gordon. That was years ago.
There were lots of leaves on the line, which made the tracks very slippery. Gordon, however, made the journey across the island without any problems. When he arrived at the other end of the line, the Fat Controller was waiting.
Good afternoon, sir.
Good afternoon, Gordon. The storm is getting stronger, so this means speed restrictions are being imposed all over the island. All express trains are cancelled until further notice.
So what am I supposed to do, sir?
Well, there's a goods train waiting in the yard. You can take that back to Tidmouth. Gordon hated goods trains, but he agreed as there was nothing else to do. He arrived at the yards and was coupled up.
Now gently does it, Gordon. We don't want to risk crashing.
The signal dropped and Gordon puffed away. All was well until they came to the top of Gordon's Hill. The trucks were beginning to think of another scheme. They pushed Gordon faster and faster down the hill. Gordon's driver tried to apply the brakes, but the rails were slippery, and it was no use. Gordon didn't realize until too late that he passed a signal set at danger. Edward was traveling up the line with a train of stone. Both engine crews jumped clear as Gordon smashed head-on into the trucks.
Oh, I'm so sorry, Edward. These trucks were pushing me.
It's okay, Gordon. A few minutes later, the Fat Controller arrived. Don't worry, Gordon. This isn't your fault. The momentum of the trucks combined with the slippery rails must have caused the accident. Gordon was sent to the works to be mended. While he was away, Henry took over pulling the express. But that's another story. A few days ago, Gordon had crashed into Edward's train due to slippery rails. While he was at the works, Henry had the job of pulling the express. One day, he was waiting at the big station. Edward was there as well.
Good morning, Edward.
Good morning, Henry.
Do you know if Gordon's okay?
Yes, he is. His buffers are completely scratched up. He'll have to have them replaced.
Well, I hope he gets out of the work soon. Goodbye, Edward.
Henry was making good time as he thundered along the line. All was well until he reached the junction. Henry's driver saw that there was a rock on the line. He slammed on his brakes, but it was too late. No one was hurt, but Henry's front wheels had been damaged. Thomas happened to be waiting at the junction.
Don't worry, Henry. There's a phone box at the next station. I'll go and get help.
Soon, Percy arrived with the breakdown train. Henry was loaded onto a flatbed and taken to the works. Once he arrived, he was shunted onto the inspection siding. Gordon was there as well. He was being inspected for his return to work the next day.
Good evening, Henry. What brings you here?
Well, someone left a rock on the line, causing damage to my front wheels.
I wonder who could have done that.
Well, Gordon, I'm here to tell you and Henry the answer.
What happened, sir?
Well, after the accident was cleared up, the police investigated the scene. Their conclusion is that the rock was left on the tracks by vandals. Gordon and Henry were shocked. Once you return to work, I want you to be cautious. If you see anyone meddling with railway equipment, let someone know immediately. And with that, the Fat Controller left. But little did anyone know that it wouldn't be Gordon or Henry who saw the vandals next. The next day, James was shunting trucks in the big station yard.
Come on, you troublesome trucks. I'll need a new coat of paint when the day is done.
Diesel overheard what James said.
James, be careful with those trucks. You might get into another accident with some tar tankers.
How did you hear about that?
Percy and Toby tell a lot of stories.
James ignored Diesel's remark and puffed away. He was taking the trucks to the coaling plant to be refilled. On the way, James stopped at the red signal, but suddenly it turned green.
That's strange.
But then, there was trouble.
Oh, I'm so sorry, Percy. Don't worry, James. This wasn't your...
But before Percy could say anything else, both engines saw a group of boys running away. It didn't take long for the police to arrive, and the boys were soon taken away. Henry returned from the works the next day, and life on the Fat Controller's railway went back to normal. Mavis is a diesel engine with cowcatchers and side plates like Toby's. She mainly works at the Anopa quarry on Thomas's branch line. One day, however, her engine overheated, which caused her to have to go to the works. Percy and Toby took over quarry duties while Mavis was away, but the work soon piled up. Both engines spoke of their concerns to the Fat Controller.
We're tired, sir.
Yes, we are. Since I'm shunting trucks up at the quarry, there have been no engines to take the stone trains to the docks. No need to worry. I've arranged for an engine to come help shunt trucks. That means you can continue taking the stone trucks to the docks, Toby. Who will be helping out? Diesel is the only engine that's available. The engines were worried. They knew how much trouble Diesel could be. The next day, he arrived at the quarry ready for work. Good morning, engines.
If you think about playing another trick, then I can assure you...
Don't worry, I won't play any tricks. Okay, we believe you, for now at least. And with that, Diesel rolled away. The engines soon set to work. A few hours later, the yards had been cleaned. However, there was still one more train to take, and Diesel was in charge of arranging it. Now get a move on, you trucks.
No, we won't move. We want Percy or Toby or Duck.
Diesel was so cross that he pushed the trucks fiercely. The trucks flew down the rails and came off the line. No one was hurt, but the foreman was very cross. Well done, Diesel. Now the delivery will have to be delayed. But Diesel didn't seem to care. Soon, the quarry was cleaned up and the trucks were put back on the rails. Diesel was in charge of shunting the loaded trucks, but the trucks were filled with too much stone. Diesel knew this, but he didn't bother telling anyone. Percy was in charge of taking the stone train to Knapford. He was coupled up to the trucks, the signal dropped, and Percy puffed away. Soon, Percy was traveling down the quarry line. Suddenly, the trucks began to push him faster and faster. Percy's driver tried to apply the brakes, but it was no use. Up ahead was Elsbridge Junction. A quick-thinking signalman saw the oncoming train and switched Percy onto the track that led to the harbor. Percy's driver and fireman jumped clear as he derailed over a set of points. Nobody was hurt, but Percy lay dazed and surprised as the trucks laughed endlessly. Soon, the Fat Controller arrived, as well as Thomas with the breakdown train. Whoever caused this disturbance will have me to answer to. And he was right. When Mavis returned from the works, the Fat Controller spoke to Diesel. You said you wouldn't cause trouble anymore. I do not tolerate engines that lie to others. You will be sent back to the other railway as soon as I can arrange it. After hearing a statement like that, do you think Diesel will ever return? One day, Thomas arrived at the junction. Percy was glad to see him.
Hello, Thomas. What are you doing? I'm taking these passengers to the airfield. I heard that there were a film crew who want to get aerial shots of the island of Sodor. That sounds exciting.
Just then, the guard blew his whistle.
Well, I better be off. Goodbye, Percy. Goodbye, Thomas.
Thomas took the passengers to the airfield, where Harold the helicopter was waiting. Good morning, Lazy Wings. Be quiet, Thomas. I have the honor of flying a film crew around Sodor. Fair point, Harold, but I wish that I could be taking them. Just then, Harold's propeller roared into action. Well, looks like it's time for me to go. Goodbye, Thomas. Goodbye, Harold. Later that day, Thomas arrived at Troyrec Station. Just then, he saw Harold flying overhead. "Hello, Harold." "Hello, Thomas. Can't talk. I don't want to keep the director waiting." All day, Harold flew across the island while the film crew took aerial shots of the island of Sodor and its engines. All went well until that evening, when the director wanted to get a good shot of Gordon pulling the Evening Express. He lost his balance, and the camera fell out of Harold's cabin and down to the surface below. Harold couldn't land on the tracks, so there was only so much he could do. He went back to the airfield to get some help. Harold arrived just in time to see Thomas pull into the station. "Hello, Harold." "Thomas, I need your help. The film director has lost his camera. It fell out of my cabin somewhere around Wellsworth." "Of course I'll help, Harold. Little engines can do big things." The director climbed aboard Thomas's cab, and off he went. Soon, they arrived at the place where the camera fell. The director got out of Thomas's cab and started searching for his camera. "Surprisingly, my camera is working. Thank you, Thomas."
"No problem, sir. I'm always happy to help."
Soon, they arrived back at the airfield.
"You know, Thomas, I think it would be best if I got footage of you for my documentary film tomorrow. It would be my way of saying thank you. I hope you don't mind." "Of course I don't, sir. I've had books written about me, so I'm used to the fame." And with that, everyone went home. Throughout the next day, the engines were very busy, but none were as busy as Thomas, who deep down inside felt like a really useful engine.